The metaverse today feels like the next frontier in social connection in much the same way that social networking did back in 2004. End quote. And I'm sure you'd be like, Meta what, Andrea? Because I have to admit that was my first reaction to Mark Zuckerberg's speech at the Facebook rebranding conference to Meta. He was talking about this metaverse, of which I had just recently heard about, and that I have to admit, hadn't really understood much about. As everyone else, though, because of the fact that the Web 3.0 and Metaverse became buzzwords as much as NFTs did last year, I started diving into the topic mainly because of my intellectual curiosity, but also due to the fact that I believe it's necessary to always reflect upon the potential impact of new technologies on your business, although you might feel it's very, very distant still. And well, I got many of these implications out of these reflections, and this is why I picked the above quote by Mark Zuckerberg, extracted from a chat he had with Gary Vee recently on Gary Vee's YouTube channel, as the opening line of this episode of my podcast, Metanoia Club, an episode in which we will explain the implications of the metaverse to leaders, CEOs, and businesses, and in which I will lay down the 7 steps to consider in order to better navigate the Web 3.0. Here's your host, Andrea speaking. I'm an Italian keynote speaker to more than 100 companies per year, focusing on digital transformation, leadership, and innovation, and a best-selling author of 2 books. They're in Portuguese because I've been based out of Brazil over the last 10 years, and now I'm based out of New York City. I've worked over the last 10 years as the head of Tinder in Latin America and as a chief digital officer at L'Oreal. I'm an economist specialized in behavioral science from Bocconi University. I hold a master's degree in international relations from Johns Hopkins, and I currently teach at the Executive MBA at Fundação Dom Cabral, the top executive business school in Latin America, according to the Financial Times ranking. And if you enjoy the podcast and want to get in touch, you can contact me at andreaiorio.com, my website, or on LinkedIn, where I engage daily with my community of more than 60,000 followers, with contents at the intersection of business, technology, behavioral science, and philosophy. So, hit me up there. And before getting deep into our episode, I just wanted to share a bit more of a context around the podcast, because the objective here is to basically spark the reflections that we usually don't have the time, willingness, or even the courage to face in our day-to-day rushed lives. Because this podcast is not about providing the answers, but it is about bringing the hard questions and intellectual provocations to the table and creating the necessary urgency to change the way we lead, we innovate, and we do business in the digital age. So how will it work? Well, after introducing the main character of the episode, we will listen to one of his or her quotes, and I will comment on this quote in depth, which is the core of the podcast. And now that we're all clear, please let me share a bit more about the leader and entrepreneur that is at the core of this episode. It's Mark Zuckerberg. He's a controversial figure, isn't it, having migrated from the Silicon Valley prodigy kid to the enemy of privacy and promoter of fake news. Talking about Mark, he's known for co-founding the social media website Facebook and its parent company Meta Platforms, formerly Facebook. I know we're still not used to, calling it Meta, of which he's the chief executive officer, controlling shareholder, and chairman. So Zuckerberg attended Harvard University, where he launched Facebook from his dormitory room in February 2004 with his roommates Eduardo Saverin, Brazilian, Andrew McCollum, Dustin Moskowitz, and Chris Hughes. So basically it was launched to, for college campuses, but then eventually it expanded rapidly and eventually went beyond colleges, right, reaching 1 billion users by 2012. Then he took the company public in May 2012 with majority shares, and in 2007, at age 23, he became the world's youngest self-made billionaire. They started growing, and since 2008, Time magazine has named Mark Zuckerberg among the 100 most influential people in the world. Well, he controls a lot of our social interactions, and so he's definitely very powerful, up to a point that he's a very polarizing figure, first acclaimed and then today seen as an enemy of privacy. The Facebook brand as a whole has kind of suffered from this whole dilemma, right? Isn't it? But in an effort to change that, he recently announced the rebranding of Facebook to Meta, declaring his commitment to making Facebook the leader in the metaverse, which, if I may, I hope doesn't even happen, as I would exactly go against the main pillar of the metaverse, namely its decentralization. So I hope there will be no leaders in the metaverse. Anyhow, He recently was speaking with Gary Vee about the metaverse on Gary Vee's YouTube channel, and that's what we are going to listen now. Mark Zuckerberg talking about the metaverse. Listen up.
Yeah, so the metaverse to me today feels like the next frontier in social connection in much the same way that social networking did when I was getting started back in 2004. And, that's a big reason why we wanted to change the brand of the company is that, today I think most people think about us as a social media company. But in our DNA, we're a technology company that builds all kinds of different technology to help people connect and tries to advance human connection. And of course, social media is one important part of that. But I think increasingly, it's going to be about building platforms and experiences that deliver this sense of presence, like you're right there with another person. So there's, of course, all the virtual and augmented reality parts of that, and there's the hardware, and I'm really excited about that. The work that we've been, we've been working on that for 7 years now at this point, so that's making a lot of progress. But I think some of the experiences are starting to come together too.
Imagine that you're walking down the street, walking your dog in the morning, and that out of a sudden you remember that you have to buy a house cleaning product that you ran out of. In the blink of an eye, a vending machine appears in front of you stacked with this product in all its options of smells, sizes, and prices. So you stop, you look at the options, and actually choose an item from the machine. As soon as you make the payment with your virtual wallet, the product is already on its way to your house, and you can continue walking your dog in a complete peace of mind. Soon after, you get an alert about your favorite artist going to start a performance on stage at London's Wembley Stadium in like 5 minutes. You live in New York City, but let's say you still buy the tickets and rush home to enjoy the show from the comfort of your living room. So, how could all this be possible? Because you might think that these scenes are like excerpts taken from Black Mirror series, the British Netflix series that kind of like describes a far-fetched future, but the truth is that they represent the possible real-world applications of the metaverse, which already exist and are much more real than the word of Black Mirror. Because, well, my dear listeners, welcome to the metaverse. That is basically an alternative digital reality where people work, socialize, and play. You can call it the metaverse, the omniverse, as NVIDIA prefer to call it, the AR cloud, the magic verse, or whatever you prefer. But one thing is for sure. It's coming, and it's a huge business. So, first of all, what is this metaverse thing? Because the term was born from the junction of the Greek prefix meta, meaning beyond, and universe, and fundamentally is a virtual and collective shared space created by the convergence of virtually enhanced physical reality, represented by the digital twins of which we will talk about, and the virtual space that already permeates the physical world, in particular augmented reality, also called AR. Confused? Think of it this way. Today, we are online when we access the internet, but when, with new devices, greater connectivities, and cutting-edge technologies, we will basically be online the whole time, which is why the internet wave we are experiencing is also defined as Web 3.0, a new generation of internet services that will be built on top of decentralized technologies, such as the many existing blockchains. Because look at the evolution of the web. Web 1.0 came with the birth of the internet and fundamentally digitized information, submitting knowledge to the power of algorithm. And this phase came to be dominated by Google. Web 2.0 came with social media, running mostly on smartphones and digitized people, and subjected human behaviors and relationship to the power of algorithms. And this phase was dominated by Facebook. So what about Web 3.0? Now, this third phase will fundamentally digitize the rest of the world. In Web 3.0, all objects and places will be readable by machines and subject to the power of algorithms. And who will the metaverse be dominated by? Most likely by anyone and no one at the same time, exactly because it's a decentralized web. And while the concept was made popular by Facebook's recent rebranding to Meta, I know it still sounds weird, right? The concept of metaverse is not so recent. It was first used nearly 30 years ago by writer Neil Stephenson in a science fiction novel called Snow Crash. With that term, the author described the virtual reality in which people led a second virtual life. More recently, Kevin Kelly, founder of Wired magazine, wrote a 2019 cover story titled Welcome to the Mirror World, where he described how augmented reality will unleash the next big tech platforms. He wrote, "We are building a one-to-one world map of almost unimaginable reach. When completed, our physical reality will merge with the digital universe. In other words, get ready to meet your digital twin and the digital twin of your home, your country, your office, even of your life." And now you'd be like, digital twin? You might be asking yourself, well, let me introduce you to one of the first building blocks of the metaverse. That is, the concept of digital twins. They are exact virtual representation of physical things. Imagine a large manufacturing company having digital twins of its equipment. Through them, especially from his home, will be able to solve problems in a factory on another continent through the metaverse. The same technologies will enable office meetings that are much more productive than using today's two-dimensional video conferencing tool. Some of the most useful application of the metaverse will be in training and development of employees, where many people can participate in a giant virtual training room all together, or in multiple interactive training rooms like, the Zoom breakout rooms, right? With custom trails to learn faster and more efficiently. Customer-facing applications can include creating digital twins in retail, like offering a customer service experience that would not be possible in the physical world. Like companies like Mercedes-Benz, Dell, MTV, and Coca-Cola are already using the metaverse to do this. But so let's try to understand what are some of the opportunities for companies in the metaverse. The truth is, there's already a group of companies leading the way in building the metaverse, with entertainment and gaming companies leading the way. Games like Fortnite from Epic Games popularized socialization between people in virtual environments. Newer gaming platforms like Roblox allowed people to create and play in immersive virtual worlds created and often monetized by their users. Even Decentraland is an entire 3D virtual world owned by its users, allowing them to create virtual structures from theme parks to galleries and then charge users to visit them, all powered by Ethereum blockchain technology. However, the immersive environment of the metaverse is not just an opportunity for consumer-facing companies. From training future surgeons in hospitals to launching product demonstration for retail salespeople, there are many business applications. For example, technology company NVIDIA believes that investing in manufacturing and logistics metaverse simulations will reduce waste and accelerate better business solutions. Microsoft is positioning its cloud computing services to be the fabric of the metaverse, using its mesh platform to allow avatars and immersive spaces to be interconnected in collaborative environments like Teams. With remote or hybrid post-COVID work environments, many of these more creative virtual business experiences are likely to become even more relevant to how companies connect with their employees and customers. In fact, Microsoft recently bought Activision Blizzard for $70 billion in a move widely seen as that one of an old-school tech company betting on the metaverse. But the metaverse is proving to be big business, not just for tech companies, but for traditional companies bringing their businesses to the metaverse. Nike's a great example of a company pioneering the metaverse, having already launched sneakers in Fortnite and already acquired a company called RTFKT that creates virtual collectible sneakers for the metaverse. Disney is also attributing many of its recent positive results to its metaverse initiatives. The company recently surprised investors with its first quarter 2022 results, generating $7.2 billion in revenue, $3.5 billion more than the same period last year. But more surprisingly, actually much higher than pre-pandemic levels, as digital experiences helped drive growth across the company. CEO Bob Chapek told analysts that a mix of physical and virtual experiences, or what is being labeled the metaverse, is also a priority for Disney moving forward. He said, "While multi-platform television and streaming will continue to be the mainstay of sports coverage for the immediate future, we believe that the opportunity for the Walt Disney Company extends far beyond these channels. It extends to sports betting, gaming, and the metaverse." Disney even recently announced the appointment of Mike White to the role of Senior VP of Next Generation Storytelling, whose role will involve connecting to the physical and digital worlds together. That's amazing. And companies that have not yet jumped headlong into this world are however, timidly entering the race for land in the metaverse. Remember how people and businesses would buy URLs for tens or hundreds or thousands of dollars in the late 90s and early 2000s? Well, the same is happening right now with the metaverse, where Carrefour brought land equivalent to 30 supermarkets in the sandbox, and Samsung recently launched the Galaxy S 2022 in Decentraland. So, what should leaders and CEO do in front of all this? What are the questions that they should ask themselves in the wake of such a disruption? Well, I'm currently spending time in New York, United States, to study more closely the impact of the Web 3.0, among which metaverse, NFTs, blockchain, crypto, on traditional organizations. And in this period, I discussed the potential implications of the metaverse with several leaders of companies I do keynote speaking for, and I have to admit that I felt a lot of skepticism around the topic. And I understand that. It's something intangible, complex, still seen as very distant, speculative, and let's face it, it's not really clear if it's going to be something mainstream and revolutionary or nothing short of a failure, right? But this initial rejection is part of the fate of any disruptive technology or innovation that promises to revolutionize the world. So my first request to leaders and CEOs is not to shrug off any discussion of the metaverse as if it were the crazy idea of a group of digital anarchists, but to introduce it as at least an important element of discussion in the company's strategic forums. This doesn't mean endorsing it and rushing to buy land in metaverse for hundreds of thousands of dollars the next day, but at least reflecting on the implications it might have for your business. But since it is such a complex topic, my team and I worked on a model based on 7 pillars that will help you to consider in a simpler and better way the implications of the metaverse in your business. I'd like you to think about the following 7 points. First, experience. So how do you design unique experiences of use and consumption of your products and services for your customers? Because instead of being scarce and limited, experiences in the metaverse will become abundant and endless. So think about all the possibilities you would have, to make your customer relationship not just transactional, but experiential. Second, discovery. How are you found in the metaverse, and how do customers existing and future reach you? Just as in the first wave of the internet, there was a race for domains, you also need to secure your best land in the metaverse. And like SEO on Google, you need to position yourself in front of your competitors. Third is what I call user-generated metaverse. I would call it UGM. I took the freedom to invent this word. So how do you make the metaverse a collaborative space where your customers and actually workers participate in its construction? How do you encourage them through discounts, rewards, and so on? I took the liberty again and freedom to launching this term, which is born from the concept of user-generated content, where through social networks you have content generated by your customers. In the metaverse, your customers will build it together with you and your company. Fourth point is spatial computing. So how do you get the right professionals in-house or outsourced to replicate in 3D everything you have in 2 dimensions now? By 2D, referring to static content from videos, text, product brochures, voice. This is all 2D. You need to translate it to 3D. For this, you need completely new in-house technical knowledge. Fifth point, decentralization. So how do you not depend on a single metaverse, but are you present in all the main ones? The Sandbox, Decentraland, Roblox, Fortnite, etc. Because look, the central idea of the metaverse is that it is precisely a decentralized space where there are infinite metaverses, and not just a leading player like Google for Web 1.0 and Facebook for Web 2.0, but where you're present in all metaverses consistently, covering all types of audiences. 6, measure everything versus privacy. What do I mean by that? So how do you make the metaverse first, the biggest source of customer behavior data that you might get? Obviously, though, staying within the boundaries of privacy and ethics. Because if you're a retailer and you create a shelf experience for your products in the metaverse, you can actually metrify every single move a customer makes, bringing to life an ocean of data that calls for in-company analytical skills totally different from the past. Imagine you can actually see how our eyes behave in front of our product. It's crazy. And the 7th point is infrastructure. So how do I have the best technology infrastructure to better, ensure experiences in the metaverse? In addition to software, we need to think about the entire technological infrastructure behind it, from cloud computing to AI to machine learning and so on. So it is a fact that the metaverse is a technology wave that divides the world in two groups. Some argue that it is the end of human civilization and it will come in the form of VR glasses, and others argue that the metaverse represents a never-seen-before improvement in the way we interact and communicate on the global stage. The truth is that this should not surprise us, as there is always a good dose of skepticism in the face of the most revolutionary technologies. Look at the automobile. Today we can't live without it, but as soon as it was launched, the car, right? Many people were vehemently opposed to these dangerous motorized carriages. People would shout to them, "Get a horse." And for developers, creatives, and entrepreneurs building their own versions of the metaverse, this moment in time can feel a lot like the early days of the car, but instead of "get on a horse," they must be hearing "get out to the real world." And what I think, is that we're still very early in the development of the metaverses. Yes, there will be many. At the same time that the recent technological waves have shown us that the cycles are getting faster and faster. Therefore, we cannot stand still and observe the changes, but we must take our first steps in the world of the metaverse, namely doing small experiments at the time along the 7 verticals mentioned above. So I'd like you to reflect upon all this and to think about what we would do as a leader face of all this as an assignment during this week. So let me know how that goes. And that's it for today. Thanks for making it until the end of this episode of Metanoia Club, and talk soon. See you in the next one.